Hi, everyone. I'm so excited that you're here for our Boardable webinar. I'm really excited to say that I know a lot of you that maybe attend on a regular basis hear my voice a lot. You're not going to hear a lot from me today. We actually have a really great guest that's going to talk specifically about how you can leverage your board to get ready for a capital campaign. So I'm really excited that Amy is here and she is going to walk us through all of those things. Before we jump into that, I have a few housekeeping items that hopefully you're familiar with or we can quickly review. The first thing is that our chat is open. So you are welcome to chat over there. I would love if people want to drop in what organization that they're from, as well as where you're joining. That's always really fun for us to see and a really easy way just to get to know each other as well. Feel free to also add commentary or anything that you want to in the chat. If you have a specific question that you want to make sure that we get to or that we answer, please actually use the questions feature that's in the down kind of right-hand corner for you. If you drop those questions in, we'll make sure that everyone gets followed up with. If for some reason we run out of time or are unable to answer it on this webinar, we do make sure that every one of those questions that get submitted through the questions gets a one-to-one follow-up. I think that's really the gist of the housekeeping today. Pretty straightforward there. We will follow up after the webinar with the recording. So in case you have to jump or you have a colleague that wasn't able to join, if you were signed up for the webinar, you'll get the recording, which is really great. Okay, so a quick intro to our speaker. Amy Eisenstein is a CEO and founder at the Capital Campaign Pro, a 25+ year fundraising expert focused on capital campaigns and major gifts. She's a frequent conference speaker and is an author of Major Gift Fundraising for Small Shops. And we're just really thrilled to have her guide us through practical steps to prepare the board for campaign success. And, I always am so pleased to have people that are out in the field working in nonprofits, guiding us through that. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Amy and the floor will be hers. I'll wrap up at the end with a few notes about Boardable, but otherwise I'm excited to, like you, sit back and learn from Amy today.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see people starting to type in what organization you're with and where you are geographically. As Jenny said, it's always helpful and fun to see where people are logging in from. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about 6 things that you should do to get your board ready for a campaign today. So I'm guessing that you are thinking about or starting a campaign. So the first thing I want you to think about is what your board members may be anxious about. So they're probably wondering where the big gifts are going to come from. Maybe your board members are really stressed. They have no idea where those big, 6 and 7 figure gifts that you really need for a campaign are going to come from. They're not sure if the campaign will succeed or, what kind of risks to take. And they don't know what will be expected of them. So to me, as we go through our time together today, the focus is really going to be about alleviating their fear, helping them understand what's to be expected of them and the board as a whole, and to give them a little bit of confidence and ways to understand how they know where the big gifts will come from and whether and how the campaign will succeed. So that's what we're going to be thinking about today. I will get to a section later on in the conversation where we're going to think about and answer board member FAQs, frequently asked questions. So I'm going to actually take those from you. So feel free to put them in the chat or in the questions tab. And we'll start collecting those throughout the presentation of what do you think your board members really want to know? What questions are they asking? And what questions do you need to answer for them as you head into a campaign? So start, now or in the next half hour or so, loading those FAQs into the chat. So, okay, Jenny, we're going to do a poll now, or Levon, whoever's putting it up. I don't remember. So where are you in a campaign right now? Are you just thinking about it? Are you actively planning? Are you in a feasibility study? Are you asking for gifts? Or are you almost done and planning the next one? So we're going to give you another 30 seconds or so to respond. And once you respond, submit that vote and we'll look at the results. Okay. And while you're doing that, if you haven't already, let us know what organization you're from. While people are finishing putting in their votes, let us know where you are in the world. Hello, Melissa, and hello, David. Hello, Cheryl. Hello, Julie. Thank you for putting that in. Okay, so let's see. I guess, okay, so you can see the poll results here by clicking on the little poll tab, I think. I don't know. Do we have to do anything to put them up, or can people see the poll results? Let me know in the chat if you can't see them. But half of the people here are just thinking about it, or actually more than 3/4 are just thinking about it or actively planning, which is fantastic. You guys are definitely in the right place. And if you've already started asking for gifts, no worries about that. You can learn to help your board members as you go through your campaign. So just quickly, really quickly about me and about Capital Campaign Pro. We provide a modern approach to an alternative to traditional campaign consulting. We really focus on world-class expertise and combine it with the latest technology. We have an active peer support community, and our focus really is on relationship building. That's what campaigns are all about. That's what we help our clients focus on. We specialize in mid to small to mid-size campaigns. We define that as $5 million to $150 million, sort of small to mid-size campaigns. In the capital campaigns are big. That's how they're defined. So they're big by nature, but we're not doing those billion-dollar campaigns that universities are doing, but sort of all those small and mid-sized campaigns. Okay. So let's look at what we're going to cover today. And really, this is about everything is through the role or the lens, I should say, of what do your board members need to understand to feel confident and less fearful heading into a campaign. And so we're going to look at timeline and phases of a campaign, donors and money. They all want to know, where are those big gifts going to come from? Can we do this? Do we have the donors? Do they have the money? We're going to talk about feasibility studies for a variety of reasons, a really important starting point for every campaign. Then I'm going to answer some FAQs that you think your board members are going to ask. And we'll talk about roles and responsibilities of board members and 3 things that every campaign needs. We'll wrap up with that. Okay. And Jenny, if you see any questions that I missed or whatever, feel free to interrupt me, shout them out, especially if I use jargon or terminology that you don't understand. Feel free to put it in the chat so that either I go back over it and explain it better, or slow down, or whatever you need me to do. So feel free to do that. Okay. All right, so here is the timeline, or how we think about a campaign at Capital Campaign Pro. We break it down into 7 phases, and we're going to look at each phase. And so in phase 1, we consider pre-campaign planning, and that can take anywhere from 3 to 12 or more months, depending on what your project scope and scale looks like. And so that's when you're going to be figuring out the project. And that is often born out of a strategic planning process. So maybe you need more space. Maybe you want to expand programs and services. Maybe you have a capacity building effort going on. So whatever the project is, you're figuring out what the project looks like. And then from there, you can determine what are the campaign objectives. What do you need to make your project happen, right? Do you need a building? Do you need a renovations to your building or an expansion? Do you need to expand programs and services? Do you need more technology? Do you need, there's endless things, scholarship funds or various teacher training funds. There's lots of things that projects and campaigns can cover. And then based on that based on your project plan and your campaign objectives, you will determine an initial working goal. So for those of you at organizations that have milestone anniversaries coming up, and I see you, you've got a 50th anniversary or a 100th anniversary next year. So somebody on the board says, oh, let's have a campaign for our 50th anniversary and let's raise $50 million. And you'll say, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, a 50th anniversary is a real milestone and we will celebrate that. And some people will make small contributions in honor of that. It is not enough of a motivator to have a big capital campaign. Anniversaries are good to be celebrated. They look backwards. Campaigns, anniversaries look at what you've done. Campaigns are forward looking. So what will you do for the next 25 or 50 years? And your dollar goal needs to connect to the impact that that campaign will have. So it needs to be, it's not just an arbitrary random 50th anniversary, 50 million, but, how much will your programs and services and new building and project plans cost over the next 5 to 10 years? And what will that look like? And that's how you get your first initial working goal. You'll draft your case for support here. Why should donors care? Why should they give? You'll develop a gift range chart, which is a table of gifts. How many gifts do you need at what level to get you to your goal? And you will develop a depth chart, so a pipeline of donors. And the reason that I'm telling you this and going through this, I won't go through in as much detail each phase, but once your board members have a better understanding of how campaigns work and what to expect, their fears will dissipate, because the strategy of campaign planning and setting up your campaigns for success really mitigates the risks, right? And that's what they're worried about, the risks. And in this pre-campaign planning stage, I should have put this, you will probably engage a campaign expert or a campaign consultant. And so because most organizations have campaigns once every 10 or even 20 years. And so it's highly unlikely that you have somebody on your team who has experienced campaigns from start to finish, multiple campaigns, and set up the strategy from start to finish. So it's highly likely that you're going to need a campaign expert who has done dozens and dozens of successful campaigns to help you set up some of these things so that you have a much better chance of success. Now, phase 2 is a feasibility study, and we're going to go into detail on that in a little bit. But basically, the highlights are it's when you test your plan with lead donors, you discuss the case for support with them, and you assess your giving potential. So this is an opportunity initially to say, okay, we came up with a working goal in our pre-campaign planning of $25 million. Now we're going to run that, our plans and that dollar amount by some of our key potential lead donors and see what they think and if it's realistic or not. And then you're going to adjust your plans and your fundraising goal potentially based on what you learned in the feasibility study. Now, that doesn't mean your project is going to change. Let me just say that again so that everybody hears me. That doesn't mean your project needs to change. There are lots of ways to fund projects. So let's take a hospital, for example. They want to build a new cancer center. It's going to cost $100 million. Maybe 20 million of that 100 million will come from philanthropy. Some of it will come from revenue generation. Some of it will come from reserves. Some of it will come through financing. Some of it will come through other ways. But most projects, big projects, work like that. Even at small and mid-sized organizations, philanthropy is a piece of your project, and you're figuring out how much can philanthropy fund, what other funding sources do you need to look for, and as a last resort, once you've exhausted all options, then you might consider phasing or scaling back the project, but certainly that's not where you go first. So here you're going to finalize your case for support based on what you heard and develop your campaign plan. Then it's time for the quiet phase. Most people have heard about this quiet phase. It seems a little mysterious, but really what you're doing in the quiet phase is three things. One is you are soliciting three groups of people, I should say. Leadership level gifts, those at the top of your gift chart, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute. Soliciting the board members and campaign volunteers. And so these three groups of people, we hope, are going to get you to 75, 85, or even 90% of your campaign goal. So that's what the quiet phase is. And you'll see here, I say 6 to 24 months, but really probably 12 to 24 months. This is the longest phase of your campaign. It's a year to 2 years. And think about it. You're soliciting the bulk of the money. And then you're going to have a kickoff after you've already raised 75, 85, or even 90% of your goal. And you're going to announce your official goal. This is another opportunity to scale your goal up or down. Maybe in the quiet phase, you got all the gifts you hoped for. And sometimes we see organizations go over goal in the quiet phase. Does that mean they stop fundraising? No, of course not. It means they raise the goal. Sometimes the quiet phase can be disappointing. Not all those lead gifts came in as you hoped, and you might scale back the goal. So before you announce an official goal or do a press release or a brochure or anything like that, you're going to get to a certain percentage, a high percentage, before you kick off and go public. And this is really important for board members because this is the part of campaign strategy that they just don't understand. You know, if you have a board member that says, you know, let's print up a brochure and print our goal and do a press release back in phase 1, you're going to say, time out. That's, you know, that is setting us up for disaster and failure. We don't want to do that. We really need to work our plan, have a plan, work the plan, work campaign strategy so that we're successful. And next, you're going to go public, and it's shockingly short, 2, 3, 4 months, max 6. We really don't want to go longer than that. That's when you solicit your community, the base for support, re-solicit anybody that was uncommitted, and close the gap to your goal. It's shockingly short. But remember, you're only fundraising for 10 or 15 or 20% of your campaign goal. And of course, this is one way to make sure that it doesn't interfere with your annual fund by keeping the public phase short. And we can talk more about that. And finally, phase 7 is stewardship. Celebrate, express gratitudes, send pledge reminders, and collect those pledges. Okay. All right. So Diana says, I'm confused about the quiet phase. How can gifts be solicited in silence? So Diana, great question. The quiet phase is more an indicator of how you're soliciting gifts and who you're soliciting gifts from. So quiet, you wrote quote unquote silence. So quiet and silence are not the same. Quiet, think of it as a whisper campaign. You're going to talk to donors one-on-one, the biggest potential donors and your board and your campaign volunteers. This is inner circle and leadership level donors, one-on-one conversations. It means you're not shouting it from the rooftops. You're not doing press releases. You're not on social media. So it's who you're soliciting from and how you're soliciting. So quiet one-on-one conversations. Okay. Okay. All right. So timeline and phases. Board members need to understand how campaigns work. They also are really worried about where the donors are coming from, who are going to donate these 6 and 7 and 8-figure gifts, and where's the money going to come from. Okay. So the money's going to come from your top 20 donors. I would imagine you're familiar with the 80-20 rule. Campaigns are really 90-10. So top 10% of donors to your campaign are going to contribute 90% of the dollars. So I know this is too many numbers. That was confusing. More than half the money from your campaign, but really 60, 70, 80% are going to come from just a very small few number of donors. So let's look at a gift table or a gift range chart. Here I've created a very simple $1 million gift range chart, but the truth is that this works for $10 million goals, $100 million goals. And so the first row, well, let me look at the first row first. The first row is the number of gifts. You need one gift for the lead gift. Your gift size is about 25% of your campaign goal. Your lead gift should be. So we have $250,000, and growing across the top, you want 2 prospective donors for that leadership level gift. If you look at the first column, number of gifts, you'll see that they go in ascending order. Is that right? You need more gifts as the gift size goes down. So there's an inverse relationship. You need 1 gift of 250, 1 gift of 100,000, 2 gifts of 50,000, 6 gifts of 25, and on down. So let's look at what that means. The first 20 gifts, I told you, 50% or more of your campaign goal will come from the top 20 gifts. So here we've got our top 20 gifts. We're going to call these our leadership level gifts. And in this example, I easily get us to 70% of the campaign goal. And this is from 50 prospective donors. So that's sort of your campaign formula. Really, this is a roadmap to your campaign. And once you and your board members understand campaign strategy and how campaigns work, it's actually fairly simple. You don't need hundreds or thousands of donors. You need a handful of the absolute right and best donors for your campaign. And that's how you will get to your campaign goal. And I think, you know, once your board members and you start to internalize this and write this as a roadmap for your campaign, everything will start to click into place. Okay, so who are those donors, right? Who are going to make these big, humongous gifts? So let me answer Robin's question. Let me go back one slide and then I'll come back to that. So Robin's asking, how do you determine the goals for the lead gifts? So, you know, there's not a 100% right or wrong answer here. The gift chart or gift table or gift pyramid, you may have heard it called many things before, can be narrow or steep, depending on your organization and your donor base. So let's say you are an independent school with 150 families, a pretty small community of potential donors, a few alumni, but mostly current parents and grandparents. So, you know, a couple hundred donors possibility at most. You're going to actually need a steeper gift chart because you don't have a lot of major and general donors to fall back on at the base of your pyramid. So your lead gift in that scenario may need to be 30% or even 35% of your goal. Let's say you're a pediatric cancer center and so many people in your community are touched by pediatric cancer, and it's a real heartstrings kind of organization, and they have a huge donor base in your community. Then that lead gift might, you have a broader base for support. You have more donors to support the campaign. So your lead gift may only need to be 20% of the campaign goal, and then more gifts sort of trickling down. But we always start with 25%. That's sort of the average that we find with campaigns. Jenny or Levon, if you want, or anybody actually want to Google campaign gift range chart calculator, and the Capital Campaign Pro one should be at the top 2 or 3. If you want to post it in the chat for everybody, you can play with numbers and see if you put in different numbers of gifts or different amounts and different goals. Oh, thank you so much, Levon. I appreciate it. You'll be able to play with your own gift range chart calculator and play with the numbers. Okay, so who is going to make those gifts? Donors who have the ability to give believe in your mission, and contact with your organization. So this is the ABC acronym that we use in fundraising to find those. Oh my goodness, I don't know what just happened. Jumpy slides. Okay. So we're going to look first to individuals, foundations, and corporations who already support you. People who are already giving to you. Those are the first people in your donor database. We need to figure out who has the ability to give one of those top 20 gifts. And there's lots of research and wealth screening and looking at what other gifts they've made in the community. But if they're already giving to you, already volunteering with you, and have contact with you and your organization, they're your likeliest donors. Major donors in the community and current and former board members are who we're going to start looking for first. Okay, so sort of donors and money. We need to answer questions and alleviate the fear of board members about where are those big gifts going to come from, and how are we going to identify those donors, and what kind of gifts, how many gifts do we really need at what levels to be successful? And that gift range chart is the roadmap to your campaign. Okay, so now we're going to look at feasibility studies, which is really how good campaigns start. Oh, Levon, David and somebody higher, Robin, wanted to know if they're getting the slides, and I don't know the answer to that question. If you guys are sending them out, I'm happy to if you want.
Hi, as long as you're happy to share them, Amy, we'll send them out. Sometimes we just want to make sure you're okay with that, but we definitely will have the recording, and it sounds like Amy's happy to share the slides, so you guys will be fully hooked up in that regard.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, it was asked twice, so I wasn't sure. Great. Okay, so feasibility studies. This is, to me, best practice, how campaigns start, how campaigns get planned well, how successful campaigns get off to a good start. So let's examine that, because my guess is that there is somebody at your organization right now, whether they've said it out loud or not yet, who is questioning whether you should do a feasibility study. Either they've had a bad experience with one, they had a bad experience with a consultant, or they felt they were too expensive, or whatever the case. So somebody doesn't want to do a feasibility study at your organization. So let's examine why I think you should. Okay. All right, Jenny, let me ask or answer a question. So is the board primarily helping identify the donors and making introductions at this phase, or are there other things the board should be doing? Maybe, yes, let's get to that for sure. I'm going to get to that in roles and responsibilities, but bring me back to it. Okay, so feasibility studies. Really, to me, this is an opportunity to talk to your leadership level donors. That's what a good feasibility study is to engage key donors early. And I want to look back at this capital campaign formula that I showed you in the gift range chart. And what I showed you was 20 gifts getting you to 70% of the goal from 50 prospects. So what does a feasibility study do? It has you talking to the 50 prospects who have the potential interest and financial capacity to give you those 20 gifts to get you to 70% of your goal, and to get them engaged early in the process, and to talk to them about this campaign in really strategic, thoughtful ways, and give them an opportunity to give feedback long before you ask them for a gift. And that's why feasibility studies are important, is because this is a specific and intentional conversation with these 50 prospects. You won't talk to all of them. It's not like you're going to be interviewing 50 people, but these are the 50 people you're going to be looking to talk to get their feedback early on, and get their buy-in, and get their engagement in your campaign long before you ask them for a gift. So what is a fundraising feasibility study? It tests your plans, your specific plans, and a specific dollar goal. So what it doesn't do is ask, how much can we raise? If you go to donors and say, hey, we're thinking about a building, we're not sure where it is or how much it'll cost, we really want to expand, but we don't know what we're doing. How much do you think we can raise? They have no idea, right? So it tests a specific plan with a specific dollar goal. You go to someone and you say, hey, we have a long waiting list. We have for a couple of years now. We're ready to expand. We're looking at expansion plans. We've got some initial drawings from an architect, or we've invested in this property and we think we're going to do this. The first initial estimates are $20 million. Let's discuss the details and give us your feedback. They can respond to that. So it engages top prospects, those top prospective donors. It recommends a specific working goal, and it builds board confidence. To me, this is so, so important. And so if you have people at your organization that really hate the idea of a feasibility study because they are afraid that it will tell you that your project isn't feasible, which potentially is problematic, you can call it a fundraising planning study, a campaign planning or readiness study. I don't know who called it feasibility in the beginning. I wish they had picked a better name. It really should be called a planning and readiness study, and then everybody would do it. Okay. So the benefits of feasibility studies are they require a clear plan. You can't go to your donors with a vague plan. It forces you to focus on those top 50 prospects and the people who have the capacity and the inclination potentially to give you those top 20 gifts. Because let's say you don't. Let's say you interview, everybody on your board and everybody on this committee or your facilities committee and a few key members of the community, but you're not basing it on top prospective donors. You're going to get disappointing results because many of your board members can't make those top gifts. So you're going to hear from them that they're going to give much less, and you are going to be wildly disappointed. So forces you to focus on top donors. It engages those prospective big key donors. It'll clarify your strengths, weaknesses, and give you an outside perspective before you move forward with your plans. And it gives the board confidence. Think about this. If you ask your board today before a feasibility study, can we raise $20 million? They have no idea. How would they know? But if you go to them after a feasibility study and say, look, we talked to 30 of our biggest potential donors, and a significant percentage of them said, we're excited, we'll help, we'll give, we'll contribute. What a relief for your board, right? You can do this because it's not just on your board's shoulders, but now you have 20 or 30 people that are the biggest potential donors that are saying, thumbs up, we're in, your plans look good, we're excited, we'll help, we'll give, we'll volunteer, we'll support. So such an amazing thing. Okay. There are two ways to approach a feasibility study these days. One, I call the old model. It's the traditional model that's been around for decades. If you've done a feasibility study before with a consultant, you've probably done the old model, and that's where the consultant goes and interviews your biggest potential donors. And I will tell you that that model is flawed. And if you've ever done it before that way, the argument for the model for a consultant interviewing your donors is that they're interviewing confidentially and anonymously, they would say, because donors may not be open and honest with nonprofit leaders. And so because of the anonymous nature of the conversations and the interviews, they give you an aggregated report with aggregated data that says something like 3 people we talked to indicated that they might consider $1 million plus gift. And you as staff and board members are left scratching your heads wondering who on earth out of the 30 people they talked to said they might consider $1 million gift. It leaves me with an icky feeling in the pit of my stomach. They also might say 3 people were unhappy with the plan for X, Y, and Z reasons, but you don't know who was unhappy. So you have no recourse. You can't go back to them and say, hey, let's discuss this. Tell me what you think. Here's what we're doing about it. What are your ideas? It doesn't work. So now the good news is there's a better way. We call this model the guided model of feasibility study because you are still working with a consultant, with a campaign expert from start to finish. But the key difference is that you, the leaders of your nonprofit, are in the room interviewing your donors. You've had extensive training from the consultant. They've helped design the case for support and your gift range chart and your questions, the arc of the conversation you're going to have with your donors. They've given you data collection tools. The consultant still analyzes the data and provides recommendations and a report to your board. So everything's the same, except for in the guided model, you're guided through the process by an expert, but you're in the room with your donors and you're hearing everything firsthand. And this model is actually magical because it speeds up the solicitation process because this is the ultimate cultivation opportunity. You really are asking for genuine feedback from your donors, which is so important and valuable. And so we at Capital Campaign Pro have done this guided model now over the last 7 years with over 100 organizations. And so 7 or 8 years ago, you might have asked, is this going to work? And I would have been like, well, we're trying it. It's new, but it's not new and it works. And it's so much better than the old model. So if you're considering a feasibility study, I do hope you'll consider a consultant who has a lot of experience letting nonprofit leaders do these interviews and helping with every other piece of the feasibility study. So just to go back 2 slides, when you get these, if any board member or staff member is like, should we do a feasibility study? We're not sure. We're definitely doing the project. Let's just skip it and go ahead. You can come back to this slide and say there's too many benefits of a feasibility study. We can't skip it. It's not good campaign planning. I will just tell you quickly that I probably talk to, I don't know, 10 or 15 nonprofits a week that are considering capital campaigns, right? They call to discuss their plans and see if our services might be a good fit. So I talk to dozens and dozens of nonprofit leaders a month. And a few a month are in the middle of their campaigns and they're stuck. They're not at the beginning and they're calling because they need help. And most of the time they're stuck and, you know, they've raised 30% or 40% and they've been working on it for 1, 2, or 3 years. And now they're looking for help. They didn't do a feasibility study. I would say 90% of the time, somebody just said, we got to go. We can't waste time or we can't spend the money doing a feasibility study. And then 2 years down the road, they're totally stuck. And it's heartbreaking, honestly. Okay, let's go to FAQs. So this is the time when I would like you to put some questions in the chat. And Jenny, I'm going to come back to your question, I think, while others. What are the most frequently asked questions? What do you think board members are wondering? And that's what we're going to do in a minute. So Jenny, you are asking, is the board primarily helping identify the donors and making introductions at this phase or other things the board members should be doing? So yes, we want board members identifying donors, of course. The board members are going to be critical for making introductions, but I will tell you that probably not this early on, because the leadership level gifts mostly are going to come from donors that are already giving to you and that are already in your orbit. So they might help with cultivation, they might help with stewardship, they might help with the solicitation, but and we do want to use a campaign as an opportunity to get new donors and broaden our communities. But really, the first donors, the initial donors, are really going to come from those that already know and love our work, even if they're only giving very small amounts at this point. We're going to look for loyal donors. We're going to look for the organization's larger donors. Sometimes that's only $5,000 or $10,000 a year, right? And we're looking for $500,000 donors or $1 million donors. There's two things I find. One is some of these loyal long-term donors who have only given small amounts, we've never asked them for any more. We never had $1 million project, right? And so they're there in your database and you just don't know it, and that's okay. So anyways, okay, Lauren is asking how much a campaign will cost. Yes, Lauren, I love this question. Every board member wants to know, how much does a campaign cost? What should we budget for our campaign? And my rule of thumb is to start with 10% of your campaign goal, and you can go up or down from there. So let's use an example of a $10 million goal. And so you would start with a budget, or how much the campaign would cost is $1 million. So really your campaign goal would then go to $11 million because the campaign is going to pay for itself. But that 10% or 90% ROI, right? I don't know a lot of things in life where you can invest only 10% and get a 90% return. But let's talk about what's included in that 10% and how long you use it. So remember, a campaign is usually a 2, 3, or 4 year endeavor. So that $1 million to raise a $10 million campaign goal, which is really going to turn into an $11 million campaign goal, the $1 million will be broken up over 3 years of the campaign. Now, some of the expenses are front loaded, like for a feasibility study. But some of the expenses come at the end, like campaign celebrations, or if you're doing a brochure or a video towards the end of your campaign. So it'll be spread out over the 3 years of the campaign. For bigger campaigns, it's less than 10% because there are economies of scale. So like $100 million campaign, you probably don't need $10 million. It might only be 5 or 6 or 7% of your campaign goal. And unfortunately, that means smaller campaigns like $1 or $2 or $3 million campaigns, it might be 12% or 14% because there are economies of scale that work against smaller organizations, unfortunately. But let's just think about what goes into that campaign budget or those campaign costs, right? Campaign expertise, so campaign consulting, feasibility study costs, donor recognition, so all plaques, lunches, cultivation events, ribbon cuttings, kickoff celebrations, campaign materials. So if you're doing a brochure or a video or a website page or, a slide deck, those kinds of things. I'm sure there are many other things that I'm forgetting. Additional staff, you may need administrative support or to outsource some grant writing so that your core team can focus more on the campaign. Okay. All right. Well, when you think of your board member FAQs, come back to me and we'll talk. I think that's all I see right this moment. So let's talk about roles and responsibilities. We can always circle back to that. So what are board member roles? Because they want to know, what am I responsible for? What are our roles? Okay. So there's a difference between individual board members and the board as a whole. So what role will the board as a whole, as a unit, play? So number one, they're going to approve your project, right? Are you building a building? Are you renovating? Are you expanding programs and services, either geographically or in number of people you serve? What is the project? What is the plan? What is the vision for catapulting your organization to the next level of service? So they need to approve that and get on board with that. Sometimes that's in the form of a strategic plan initially, and then it morphs into a project plan for a campaign. They also need to approve the idea of and allocate funds to hire expertise. So like I said, it's unlikely that anybody at your organization has enough campaign expertise or is able to train the board and staff, able to provide the strategy and plan able to keep people accountable and know the difference between a slow period and a stuck period in a campaign, you need campaign counsel. If you're, it's highly likely that you need to hire expertise, and the board needs to understand that and allocate funding to do that. And then they will also vote to approve the plan and the goal. And that actually comes after the feasibility study. So your campaign expert, your campaign consultant will help you with a feasibility study and guide you through the feasibility study process. And then at the end of that will come a campaign plan and the next stage of your working goal. And so the board as a whole needs to approve that. But then, of course, there are roles for individual board members. So some of them include things like serving on campaign committees, contributing to the campaign, of course, helping identify prospective donors. So we do want them doing that, of course, helping cultivate donors, and of course, soliciting gifts. And there's lots of ways to engage your board. This is actually a great opportunity to re-engage board members. Frequently, I talk to people who say, my board is just not involved. They're not doing what they need to do. This is a great opportunity and moment to provide a lot of training, a lot of engagement tools. It's a really exciting time to get your board involved. Okay. All right. What else? I mean, if you can think of other roles, there's many roles for individual board members that we want them to play, but I just thanking, I don't have thanking up here. There's lots and lots of things, hosting a house committee or a house party, those types of things.
Amy, I love the house party idea. I've seen that work in practice really well, just that smaller group of kind of core donations happening there. Is there anything that the board really shouldn't be involved with, or is there like times where the board it becomes challenging, or are there things that you find like, okay, this actually, we were talking about it in another webinar recently about like getting the board involved early, making sure there's buy-in, making sure there's this, and then there's some amount of just like work that gets done that might be a little bit more staff-led, and then coming back to the board, there's kind of like an ebb and flow. Do you find that with the capital campaigns as well?
For sure. There are definitely staff-driven roles and board-led roles and responsibilities. What I would say is that I really hope, what I would do is encourage board members to really work in consultation with the staff. And where I would say that most often board members, for lack of a better word, sort of go rogue or take a campaign off the rails is in two ways. One is the naysayer board member, right? They're not going to get on board no matter what you plan, what's happening, what goes along, and they're loud, and they other people are afraid to speak up when this one board member sort of gets on their soapbox and says like, it won't work for these 12 reasons. And, that board member really needs to be taken aside and said, what's going on? Let's talk about it. This is now a good time to serve on this board, right? So we've got one board member who just derails the campaign. Another example of a board member, in some ways, in many ways, I much prefer this board member who goes rogue, who just is ready to fundraise, doesn't want to wait for plans, just out there. They're ready to ask their friends. I love them. But what could happen is, and I see this all the time, actually, those board members, they're like, I just want to go ask my friends for money. I want to see this project happen. So they don't wait for the gift range chart. They don't understand the strategy of the campaign. And they go ask their best friend or their neighbor or their colleague for, $10,000 or $25,000. And they come back and they feel so good. Oh my gosh, they got a major gift. Well, if they had really been working with the staff or figuring out the strategy, they might have known that particular board member was $100,000 prospect, and they've asked them for $10,000 or $25,000, and now that donor feels great about their gift. They had no idea that they're a $100,000 prospect on your prospect list, and that board member, by being so eager and not waiting for the plan and not working with the staff has really also harmed the campaign potentially. So being consistent on messaging. I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
No, absolutely. And I think that, our goal is always, board members want to feel really engaged and valued like throughout the process. And that's something that a lot of our clients at Boardable strive, we want it to be like a happy, cohesive relationship. I always go back to the kind is, or clear is kind, right? Like as long as everybody is enabled and knows where they can be most helpful, it seems to be really well, or it seems to work the best. One thing that I've done before on some of my nonprofit board services is we kind of had a pitch session, right? Where we all kind of practice how we talk about things, because everybody's is going to sound a little bit different. But making sure that we're not proliferating kind of misconceptions about the organization, or using terminology that maybe they're trying to get away from. And, some of those types of things, as a board member, making sure that we're being good brand stewards, if you will, and kind of messaging stewards as well. So just another thing that may work for some of your folks. I do know that Deb actually had a branding related question as well.
I'm gonna put a pin in that for 1 second. I'm just keeping one eye on the clock. So let me keep going and we'll come back to Deb's question. I see it. So let's talk about a final role and responsibility. And the question every board member has is, how much do I need to give, right? And I think your response is sort of threefold. One is as generously as possible, right? And we can get into the nuance of what that means. That's different for everybody, but a gift that makes you feel proud, right? And I really want to let that sink in for a second, because if I write off $1,000 check, okay, that's nice. I know that's nice, but does it actually make me feel proud? Did I really move the needle on this campaign? Did I help make this project happen? So that also is something that you can talk about with board members when you're getting them to consider their gift. And whatever their gift is should be over and above their annual giving. So every board needs to understand, or board member needs to understand the difference between your annual fund and your campaign. And, you can always fall back on the house analogy, right? A house is like a campaign. The campaign is like a new roof, right? It's something you need to do once every 20 years. It's going to last for 20 years, but it's a big investment. But your annual fund is your utility bill and your grocery bill and the mortgage and your lawn care maintenance, right? These things come up month in and month out, and you can't divert your grocery bill to the roof. If everybody said, well, we need a new roof, so for the next 6 months, the next 3 years, we're not going to pay our grocery bill or our utility bills, we're going to put it all towards the roof. You can't run a house or an organization on that. Your board members need to be the first to understand that. And so they need to continue their support of the annual fund or your operating fund, and also give to the campaign. Every board member needs to be solicited one-on-one like a VIP with a specific ask, and within the context of that gift range chart. Where do they fall in the campaign? All right. So I'm going to wrap up here with 3 things every campaign needs, and they're pretty simple, but they're pretty fundamental. One is donors, right? You can't do a campaign without those biggest potential donors. You may not know who they are yet, and that's okay. In my experience, it's very likely that they're in your community and in your donor database, and probably a few even on your board, even if you don't know who they are or that they have the potential to be big potential donors. So you need donors. If you're a new organization, you don't have any donors, or you are completely reliant on government grants, or you have funding a different way, a campaign is going to be really challenging. You're probably not ready for a campaign. The second thing is you need implementers. You need great staff and volunteers to help implement the plans. And so, if you don't have any development staff or you don't have any implementers, a campaign is going to be challenging. And third, you need expertise. This is not the same as implementers. So expertise is experienced campaign consultants that are going to give you the strategy, the training, the guidance, the support, the plan, the accountability, just the experience and the wisdom of when things go bumpy, which they will, to get you back on track. So anyways, so if your board's wondering, what do we need? Those are the 3 pillars. Okay, so I have a free downloadable, and I'm just going to answer the last couple of questions in the next minute or two. But if you want this downloadable, hopefully that QR code works, but you can get it at capitalcampaignpro.com/board-members-guide. Okay. Okay, Deb, you're considering branding and you want to refresh your brand, but want to understand if that has to occur before start. I mean, okay. Can everybody see the questions? I don't know if I have to read it exactly.
Yep. I think everybody can see these ones in the chat.
You're good. So, I mean, I wouldn't rebrand in the middle of a campaign. So if you're asking me if you should rebrand before a campaign or after a campaign or in the middle of the campaign, if you're going to rebrand, maybe the rebrand, maybe you're raising funds for branding or for marketing or for awareness, and then it can come later. But I think you probably rebrand before if that's an important part of your organization. I thought the question is about Capital Campaign having its own branding. And often organizations do have a slightly different logo, a slightly different look for their campaign materials to distinguish them from the annual fund. So hopefully I answered that question. And Robin, you want to know, how do you ensure that your campaign doesn't take away from your annual fundraising? Number one, like I just mentioned, you ask every board member and every donor first and foremost for a gift to your annual fund. And your campaign gifts are special one-time gifts over and above your annual campaign. And you should have super clear messaging on the difference between what your operating fund does and what your annual fund supports versus what the campaign is raising money for. And if you don't, if you have a hard time articulating that, that's something a great campaign consultant will work with you on, really distinguishing, between those two funds. And you ask everybody, every single donor in the quiet phase and in the public phase. But then another strategy is keeping that public phase short. You don't want it to be in November and December. You don't want it to be a year or years long campaign in order to not have it conflict with your annual fund. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, Jenny, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you so much to Boardable for having me. I hope it was helpful.
No, this was fantastic. And I feel like the group that was here is super engaged. So all of you probably have capital campaigns top of mind. And I can't think of a better kind of segment and a better person, to talk to our customers and our prospects about this important topic. So without further ado, I just have a couple of quick things to share. I'm going to try to share a quick slide just so that it keeps me on track. So I apologize if it's a little clunky here. But we just have a few additional upcoming events and resources. We're always wanting to provide kind of that extra value to our customers, to our clients, as well as our prospects and kind of the nonprofit community. We have another upcoming event with Nonprofit Expert Office Hours, which is just a really great way to connect and get questions answered and a lot of really great content in a small group, a little bit smaller than this usually, where you're just kind of having that sort of think of your professor office hours type of vibe. We also are having another webinar coming up about, are you serving your board committee or your board committee serving you? Really digging into what that looks like and how that can be most effective. And then lastly, there's a great new ebook about how modern governance steers strategy, fundraising, and impact. We're really embracing the idea of like governance for good at Boardable. So this idea that governance isn't this like awful, terrible, like overhead thing, but that really strong governance can actually be a propeller for your mission and a propeller for your organization. And I'm really excited about embracing that and not being like, ooh, governance doesn't sound fun. I'm convinced that maybe in the next year or something, we somehow have like governance is fun as some sort of party. Can't tell you the details there, but I do think that we can make that happen. Also, if you don't know much about Boardable, want to learn more, we're always happy to walk you through a demo, boardable.com/demo to get that done. That's all I have from the Boardable side. Truly, like Amy is the MVP of this session, obviously. So much great knowledge was dropped. Hopefully, if you didn't catch this live or if you're watching the recording, please do share it with your colleagues as well. I feel like getting everybody on the same page and that background information like this is so valuable. Then it's not you saying, hey, we need these things. It's this expert saying, hey, we really should be thinking about these things when we think about our capital campaign, and can make the conversation so much easier. We'll be sure to include all of Amy's information as well in the follow-up email. If you're interested in having a follow-up conversation with her or leveraging her resources, you'll be able to access that through those follow-up emails as well. So that's all we've got. Thank you so much again, Amy, for being a part of this. And thank you everybody for all the great questions and attending.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.